What's good, guys? This is Kid Achilles, back today with some myths about one of my favorite Olympians, Dionysus. Dionysus is an anomaly among Olympians, among all the gods in general, really. So he's like super special, but we'll get into why. But before we get too far into things, go ahead and do me a solid. Like this video, it's going to be a good one, obviously. And subscribe if you haven't, tell a friend, whatever. So as usual, we're going to go ahead and start off at the beginning with how Dionysus came to be. So there's a Theban princess by the name of Semele. Semele is gorgeous, an absolute babe. But as we're going to come to learn, being an insanely attractive woman in ancient Greece was rarely ever a good thing. Whose eye does she catch? None other than Zeus's. But Semele is different from any other woman that's ever caught Zeus's eye. Unluckily for her, Zeus falls madly in love with her. And I mean, homie is down bad. I'm talking Looney Tunes, heart eyes, drooling, everything. But one of the cool things about this relationship is that Semele fell in love with Zeus too. So, everything that they did was like super consensual. Look at Zeus being a good boy. Kinda. Anywho, Semele eventually becomes pregnant, and Zeus is just so overcome with love for Semele that one day he tells her that he will grant her anything that she desires, anything that she wants. All she has to do is name it, and it is hers. Now, before we go any further, we're going to whip the camera around to Hera. Hera is watching. Hera is always watching. And in this moment, she has an idea, an evil fucking idea, but an idea nonetheless. She sends a wish into Semele's heart, and this wish is to see Zeus in his true divine form. Keep that in here. Take that with you as we go forward. Back over to Zeus and Semele. Zeus is still laying it on thick. Anything you want, I will give it to you because I love you so much. He takes it a step further and he swears on the river Styx that he will grant whatever wish that she wants. Now, the river Styx is a river that flows through the underworld. It's the one the ferryman crosses when he's like taking souls to be judged. We'll talk more about the Styx in the future, but it is a river in the underworld which is used to make binding pacts. Now, when you swear something by the river Styx, no matter who you are, gods, mortals, whatever is in between, it is a binding oath. It cannot be broken. You have to follow through. So, with a gleaming smile on her face, Semele tells Zeus that she wants to see him as he truly is. And then Zeus's stomach sinks a little because gods know mortals cannot perceive them in their true forms. Their brains can't take it. They spontaneously combust. It's absolutely too much. So Zeus is starting to sweat a little. Kind of tries to toss it aside casually, anything else. Just wish for anything else and I'll grant it for you. Just not that thing. But since this is a wish that was sent into Semele's heart by Hera, she can't be shaken. So I imagine that Zeus, with teary eyes, gives Semele one last kiss, maybe on the forehead, maybe a little cheeky action, before exposing his true form, and as soon as he does, Semele bursts into flames. Now, before her body can be completely consumed by the flames, Zeus reaches into her stomach where their unborn child is still cooking, pulls the child from her, cuts his leg open, stores the baby there, and sews his leg up so that he can hide the baby from Hera. So yeah, R.I.P. Semele, Hera will get you, man. But the baby continues cooking in Zeus's thigh. Not sure how that felt for him. Whatever. And once the baby is finished cooking, he's born from Zeus's leg, and now enters Dionysus. So interesting thing about Dionysus is he is the only god to ever be born from a mortal woman. Now, I'm not sure how much of that has to do with the latter part of his development being inside of Zeus's body, or if he's just that guy. I like to think he's just that guy. But after he's born, he is taken by Hermes to Mount Nysa, where he is raised by nymphs called the Hyades, which are rain nymphs. So a cool duality that's going on with Dionysus right now is he is born of fire, but raised by rain. Also cool there is him being a god of wine, which obviously comes from the grape, which needs the intense heat of the sun to grow, but also, water to sustain it. So there's a few ways in which this is kind of bouncing around in the ways that he's represented. So as a young man, Dionysus travels around a lot. He's just, very jovial and on a mission to become more worldly and see how people live. He travels to places like Lydia, Phrygia, and Persia, to name a few. Now, most interesting about Dionysus are definitely a few of the myths that he's in. I'll just say a few things about his personality before we get into myths, because you're going to really see how those different sides of him come out. Now, as a god of wine, Dionysus is also a god of, joy and merriment and just kind of that fun feeling that comes along with being drunk, wine drunk specifically. But in that same vein, with drunkenness can also come a savage brutality. Those are definitely two sides we're going to see of Dionysus going forward. He could be very kind and beneficent. He's no stranger to good deeds, but he's also known as a god of madness and has on more than one occasion driven people to do some crazy banana shit. But all right, with all that out of the way, let's keep moving forward. So first story that we have involves pirates, and you know how I feel about pirates. So one day Dionysus is walking along some beach ashore somewhere when a pirate ship happens to sail up. They appear. Now, when they see Dionysus, they don't know that they're seeing a god. What they see instead is a young man wearing rich purple robes with, just rich dark hair, just a full-faced happy guy just moving along. So based on his appearance, he seems to be a youth that comes from money. And so when the pirates see him, they see an easy mark. So the great idea that these morons get is to kidnap this youth, because surely someone will pay a lot of money to get him back. And so they do it. They grab Dionysus, they throw him on the ship, and they are beginning to sail off. Now, as they're trying to contain him, Dionysus doesn't put up a fight at all. He just kind of sits there and has a very mischievous smile kind of playing in his eyes, which for me would have been enough. Who the fuck is excited about getting kidnapped? But these pirates are no brainiacs, because that wouldn't make for a good myth. But there is one of them, a helmsman, who is thinking this way. He feels immediately that something is wrong, that this is not right. And he says, hey man, that dude is probably not normal and we need to let him go immediately. But they laugh at him. They're not trying to hear it. The captain himself, tells him he's crazy and they're going to go through with this plan. Now, the whole time they're trying to tie my guy up, and every time they do, the ropes just fall away. None of the knots are holding. The ropes are actually unraveling as they're trying to tie him up. But as I said before, we're going through with it. Now, it's time for these guys to really put out to sea. So they hoist the sails. Pretty sure that's what that's called. And wind is filling the sails, but the ship is just not moving. So while everyone is still, making fun of the helmsman, weird shit starts happening. Wine is now running down the deck of the ship. Vines with clusters of grapes are spreading on the mast. Garlands and shit are spreading all over the sails. So now everyone is shaken up. They're like, we need to go back to land. We don't know what the fuck is going on, but this is no good. And then Dionysus turns into a lion. And that's the last straw for a lot of these folks. They jump into the water so as to escape, a grisly mauling by a giant lion. But as soon as they hit the water, their bodies elongate, their skin becomes smooth and gray, and they get turned into dolphin. All of them except for the helmsman who tried to warn the rest of the crew in the first place to let Dionysus go. Dionysus spared him from the same fate as his crew because he recognized him as someone who recognized Dionysus. And so it was like a blessing of sorts to, not get turned into a dolphin. So yeah, that's Dionysus and the pirate. So next we have the myth involving Lycurgus. Lycurgus was a king of Thrace, and when Dionysus came to Thrace, Lycurgus violently opposed his new worship. And so Dionysus was a little sensitive. Nothing wrong with that, but Dionysus went away for a little while, to kind of get himself together. But when he came back to Thrace, punished Lycurgus. He threw him into a cave, and that cave is where he stayed until Lycurgus went insane, and in the depths of this insanity came to recognize Dionysus as a god and accept his worship. So yeah, a little heavy-handed, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way the wine pours. Moving on. So eventually Dionysus forgives Lycurgus, lets him out of the cave, and lets bygones be bygones. But Zeus does not forgive him. He strikes that motherfucker blind for ever doubting Dionysus. Being a good dad? Question mark? All right, we have absolutely got to talk about the Maenads. The Maenads were followers of Dionysus, and they were wild as shit, literally. They dwelled in the forest. That's where all of their worship takes place. The gods enjoy order. They worship in temples and, in cities. The Maenads worship in the depths of the woods as wildly as possible. Maenads were pretty cool. They did lots of dancing and singing. They were very charismatic, and when they were taken through towns and cities, they gained lots of followers just because their energy was so intoxicating, literally. But make no mistake, the Maenads were frenzied women, and they were frenzied with wine. How else do you celebrate the god of wine other than by drinking wine all the time? Now, they weren't just frenzied because they were drunk. I mean, when I think of them, I imagine a bunch of crazy strong ladies with the temperament of piranhas when it came to violence. If they came across a creature that was threatening them while they were in the woods, they just converged on it and tore it to pieces with their bare hands. They did carry thrysis, which were like staffs with pine cones at the tip, which is one of the symbols of Dionysus. But yeah, man, they were strong and scary. So, you know, keep that with you as we go forward. All right, guys, we're gonna go back to Thebes. Now, if you remember, Thebes is where Semele was from. Dionysus comes to Thebes in his travels, and now he has with him like a bunch of Maenads, and they're walking through Thebes, you know, dancing and like singing around, having a great time. And Pentheus, who is the king of Thebes, is not fucking having it. Now, cool thing about Pentheus, there's nothing really cool about Pentheus, but he is Dionysus's cousin, which I don't think anyone realizes. But yeah, he is the son of Semele's sister and has no idea that the leader of this band that's kind of traipsing through his city is his cousin. Since the Maenads and Dionysus even aren't really like, you know, your standard members of society, they're dressed strangely. And so, as I said, they have influence whenever they are, you know, going through like cities or towns. People are in awe of them. They want to dress like them. And so Pentheus sees the effect that, you know, these people are having on his townsfolk, and he says that he wants Dionysus arrested and brought in. Now, as he's given this official order, he hears a stern warning from behind him. It's a warning from Tiresias, who is a blind seer, and he tells him he shouldn't go against this new person, and essentially that he walks with gods and that, you know, going against him would be completely unwise. Now, typically, Pentheus would take the advice from a guy like Tiresias. If anyone knows what they're talking about, it's the motherfuckers who can see into the future and talk to the gods and shit. But when he turns and looks at Tiresias, he sees that he is decked out kind of in the same clothes that all the Maenads are like wearing. That's like, you know, become so popular now in Thebes. And after he sees him, he's not trying to hear anything he's saying. He's really pissed off now. And, you know, so he goes through with it. So his guards go out and they get Dionysus and they bring him back in. But when they come back, they all seem a little like flushed and spacey. And they're like, hey, you know, we brought that guy in. He didn't put up a fight or anything. He didn't resist at all. He just came right with us. And some of the shit that he's doing is actually like really crazy. So I always just imagine that like they're just like broing it up with Dionysus while they're just like escorting him to the palace, but they're supposed to be like arresting him. So this pisses Pentheus off even further. He's talking to Dionysus really, really roughly, just being a real asshole. And Dionysus is talking back to him, just, you know, completely composed, polite, just cool as a cucumber. But he warns him that he's not going to be able to keep him in prison because God's going to set him free. And when Pentheus challenges him, Dionysus simply says, God is here and he's going to set me free. Now, what Pentheus isn't seeing is that he's referring to himself because he's a god and he can't be contained. But this Theban king is pissed off and obviously a moron. So he demands that Dionysus be taken away. And Dionysus, as he's being escorted away, says, you know, this prison won't hold me. I walk with the gods. But Pentheus isn't trying to hear it. Now, when Dionysus gets brought in, the Maenads all escape into the hills. Another thing that really, really pisses Pentheus off. Now, as we said before, the prison can't hold Dionysus. And so he leaves the prison and approaches Pentheus one more time, tells him to, you know, accept his worship, that things don't have to be the way that they are. But Pentheus is not having it. He threatens him, he insults him, he's just being absolutely nasty. And so Dionysus leaves him to it. But what Pentheus doesn't know is that his fate is sealed. So Pentheus goes into the hills to pursue all of the Maenads that got away. Now, as we said before, whenever the Maenads travel through a city, they gain lots of followers. Among the followers that they've collected in Thebes are Pentheus's mother and his aunt, his mother's sister. And so Pentheus finds what he's looking for, but when he comes across the Maenads, Dionysus shows himself in one of his most terrifying forms. He sends madness into the Maenads. And so when they see Pentheus, they see him as a wild beast. And leading the charge and the rush to tear him limb from limb are his mother, followed by his aunt. And that's exactly what they do. They rip him apart until he is just viscera in the grass. Once the deed was done, he restored the Maenads to their senses, and so then Pentheus's mother and aunt see what they had been made to do. Yeah. Dionysus is a wild card, man. He's the really chill friend who also probably has some anger issues that you can't really bring up because he'll kill you. But yeah, he does some pretty okay stuff sometimes. In the first video, we talked about Ariadne being left on Naxos. Dionysus is who rescues her from Naxos because Naxos is actually dedicated to him. That's like one of his homes. But he marries Ariadne, they have a bunch of kids, and when she dies, he puts a crown in the sky that's like representative of her, like a crown that he made for her. He throws it into the sky. We'll get more into Ariadne's death when we talk about Perseus. Oh yeah, we're going to cycle back to Simile. So when Dionysus is like a full-fledged god, he goes to the underworld and kind of steals his mom from there and makes her a god. And so she lives as an immortal on Olympus. So that's cool for Simile. She goes out kind of crazy, but like she comes back. And so that's cool. That's important. But yeah, man, that's what we got today for Dionysus. This has been an absolute blast to talk about. Like I said, Dionysus is one of my favorite Olympians. His ass is crazy. But yeah, man, I appreciate you guys for watching and kicking it with me. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, hit me with a like, share this around. I'd love for other people to, get to enjoy story time as well. I appreciate every single one of you. This has been Kid Achilles, and I will see you next time.